Hello, I'm Travis Newton, and this is my final project for GIS 582, Estimating Sea Rise Impact to American Samoa. I'm interested in all the low-lying oceans within Oceania and how sea rise will affect them in their day-to-day lives, and will governments that oversee these territories, will they have to eventually evacuate them back to mainland? So that's my question. Will sea rise impact on residential homes and farmland require relocation of American Samoa citizens to the mainland? We can look at two sub-questions within that, is how many homes and people will be displaced from the sea rise, and how many acres of potential farmland will be lost. Initially, I downloaded everything that I could find, but I ended up choosing just the NOAA and the U.S. Census Bureau data, which I got 3 files from NOAA and 2 out of the Census Bureau that were actually used. Just a note on the ACS, if you guys are familiar with it, it has now been decommissioned, and there's a new link that I have here, so you might want to save that to your notes. So this study was broken up into two phases. One was the manual phase, where I pre-processed everything, and then phase 2, which was the model builder, which took that pre-processed information and ran through the model. This was the very easy part. It was land classification. It was dirty. I just had to clean it up and then reclassify it, resample it, and then clip raster to get me just my study area of either things that could potentially be farmland and stuff that was not. And this was the tough part that was done over spring break and then extended spring break. I found number of homes per census tract, or I'm sorry, per block group, as well as how many people lived in homes in the block group. I built a vector file that had just over 2,900 buildings within the study area. Figured out how big they were. I took that number of total buildings and then was able to aggregate that into how many people lived in each one of those buildings. Now, each one of those buildings wasn't a residential, so then I kind of make the assumption that a third of these buildings were residential, a third were government, and a third were commercial. So I got an aggregated mean per building. I then took this information, brought it back down into the block groups, tracks, and then I was able to spatial join that over to the buildings. From here, I also did got a centroid for each building in a point file. I extracted some elevation data, brought it on over back to the table, so I had a Z value, and then I created an M value based off of 3 different stories: story 1, story 2, story 3. I'm using square footage as my inputs. That way I could build the 3D model later on. Here we have our interpolation method. I struggled with this at first. I tried using the LiDAR from NOAA, but it did not come in raw point format. It came in you get it in a TIFF, a float, or a grid. I tried all 3 of those. It has the holes for where the buildings are because it's giving you a bare earth. Hindsight is 2020. I might have worked had I gone and done this exact same method with that LiDAR data, but I ended up choosing the DEM. I just felt safe with it. So I created a hill shade that was used later on. And then I created a fishnet. This is what a fishnet looks like when there are so many points. The first couple tries at the fishnet, they weren't close enough. So then I would have, you see over here, I have islands. Those would not show up, so I ended up using a 0.0001 cell size on those fish nets to get them close enough together to make this interpolation. And this was my base for my model builder. All right, this is the model builder with the 3 subgroups: sea rise, land classification, and building impact. It was built around those 3 main files, which is land classification, attention spline, and the building. It starts off over here on the left. We have our tension spline, and then we do a conditional based off the IPCC AR5 moderate sea rise of 15 millimeters a year, which takes me out to 1.32 meters by 2100. I add all of that together here in a raster. I then also eliminate the land from that calculation, and then we move over here into the land farming. I tried 3 different things. One was to tabulate the area. This gave me actually a right output. I just could not translate the pixel value correctly. I also did a pick here just so I could see farmland only. I also did a polygon. This could go a little bit further to calculate and dissolve it all. But I stopped there, and because the zonal geometry gave me a table output in the data that I wanted for an overall land that was being impacted by the sea up to 2100. Is where this tabulate area though, when you tabulate, that'll give you how much is impacted per output. So I could see how much is 2020, how much has been impacted in 2040. We come down here to our buildings. We have a raster input. I took my buildings and turned those into a raster as well. And basically we're intersecting those with raster calculator, turning that from a float to long. So I want to export that out to a polygon. Once I have that in a polygon, then I do a select by location after I've done my geometry of the areas, and I get my buildings that are only being affected by the sea rise. So the results of this study showed that there was minor housing impact. Only 58 of the buildings were hit. I don't know how many of those are actually residential. Farming had basically 0 impact. Some of the stuff along the coast just got brought in originally from the land classification, but it's more just like grass, nothing farming heritable. And I talk about all this in the report. There may be some minor impact to port facilities, but really, unless we see that high risk that the IPCC talks about of 2.4 meters, then American Samoans will be fine, at least until 2100. And I do talk about some high flood areas shown here, 1 and 2, and then high risk flood areas because these are ports and they have other like tank facilities here at number 4. And this is in the report. And here is the report. If you want to read it, you can email me. I'll send you a copy. It has various pictures in it, just like this on the left. It shows flooding, and this is, of course, the moderate flooding that's taking place, not that high risk. So I'm not very good at making movies, so what I did was use this video recorder and just kind of show you what the 3D model looks like. This is at the 1.32 meter rise. You know, there's some impact in this cove over here. As we're moving along, this is all kind of the port area where they have some impact. Here, these are some like shopping complexes in here that will be impacted. There's also a soccer stadium over there. Now, if we look at the oh my God, death and destruction. This is the 2.4 meter rise. Again, I didn't do all the hard data on this. This was just for visual effects. You can see it's much worse, and we don't plan on that. The IPCC doesn't. That's just a worst case scenario. As you can see, all the ports are gone, so they're not going to be able to get their goods. Resident homes are destroyed. Shopping is destroyed. Roads are blocked off. You can see there's only, if you look at the imagery, there's only single roads that go throughout these communities. So like a ring road. So as the ocean comes in, these roads are cut off, basically just blocking off everything. These guys are stuck. All right, so for some future research I plan on doing is continuing this model into the surface hydrology course next fall. I'd like to try and incorporate other variables, you know, like, hey, can I add more rains into the watershed, and that will help fill up the ocean as well? Can we also reduce the elevation of the island while raising the seas? Because the island is subducting, and increase the power of the sea rise as the Antarctic ice shelf melts. Try and build this in a Python model using a GUI system, and also incorporate some GP tools with a web app, stuff learned from GIS 550, and try and make an animation of this video series as the years go on. Try and move this research from more of the volcanics, Samoa, over into the Northern Mariana Islands. It's got the Marshall Islands, Saipan, everything that's up north there. It's a lot more flatter, but NOAA's data is they don't have as much on it. And then also take the tools from GIS 582 and apply it towards a NASA fellowship that I'll be doing this summer. We're looking at drought impact on forests in the Cherokee Indian Reservation, and we'll be doing a symposium in Raleigh in April of next year if you'd like to come. And that's all I have. And last thing is, if you want to compare these outputs with the NOAA Sea Slider, here's the link right down here at the bottom.